New York City. Summer 1969. Steve Paul's The Scene Club. A small, dingy club in midtown Manhattan. The kind of place where rock stars came to jam after their official gigs. Where Led Zeppelin, Janis Joplin, Frank Zappa would drop in unannounced. Where the real music happened. Tonight, a college band was on stage. Sha Na Na. 12 guys from Columbia University dressed like 1950s greasers, gold lamé suits, pompadour hair, ducktails, playing retro doo-wop and early rock and roll at the height of the psychedelic era. It was absurd, anachronistic, completely out of step with 1969. And Jimi Hendrix loved it. He stood in the back of the club, watching these kids perform. They had energy, precision, harmonies that were tight despite their campy presentation. They were entertaining in a way that transcended irony. Far out, man, Jimmy said to whoever was standing near him. Far out. The band had played maybe 8 gigs total. They'd formed earlier that year, transforming from Columbia's Glee Club into this theatrical rock and roll revival act. They were nobodies. College students playing dress-up. But Jimmy saw something. And when Jimi Hendrix saw something, he made things happen. He got the Woodstock promoters, Michael Lang and Artie Kornfeld, to come down to the Scene Club. Told them, you have to see this band. They came. They watched. They were blown away. That night, Sha Na Na was offered a slot at the Woodstock Music and Art Fair, the festival that would define a generation. 3 days of peace and music in upstate New York. Payment, $350. The check would bounce. But that didn't matter. Because what happened at Woodstock, because of Jimi Hendrix's generosity and insistence, would launch Sha Na Na into a 50-year career that's still going today. This is the story of how Jimi Hendrix discovered a college band playing to almost nobody, got them onto the biggest stage in rock and roll, and then refused to perform himself until they got their chance to play, even when the festival was falling apart around him. To understand this story, you have to understand what the Scene Club was in 1969 and why it mattered so much to the musicians who gathered there. Located at 301 West 46th Street in Midtown Manhattan, the Scene was opened by Steve Paul in 1964. By the late 1960s, it had become something unique in the New York music landscape, a genuine musicians club, not a venue for fans, not a commercial operation focused on ticket sales, a place where musicians came to play for each other. The club itself was nothing special. Dingy, actually. Small, dark, sweaty, low ceilings. The kind of place where the floor stuck to your shoes and the air was thick with cigarette smoke and substances that weren't technically legal. But the music was everything. Steve Paul had created an ecosystem where rock stars felt comfortable dropping in unannounced. After their official shows at larger venues like Madison Square Garden or the Fillmore East, they'd come to the Scene to jam. No pressure, no expectations, no critics writing reviews. Just music. Led Zeppelin would show up and play blues for 2 hours. Jimmy Page and Robert Plant trading riffs with whoever else was on stage. Tiny Tim, the falsetto-singing ukulele player who somehow became a late 60s sensation, was a regular. The Jeff Beck Group, featuring a young Rod Stewart on vocals, used the Scene as a rehearsal space and jam venue. Janis Joplin would come in after her own shows, have a few drinks, maybe jump on stage for a song or two. Frank Zappa treated it as a laboratory for musical experiments. Johnny Winter, the albino blues guitarist from Texas who was taking New York by storm, jammed there constantly. The list went on. If you were a serious musician in New York in 1969, you knew about the Scene. And if you were really connected, you played there. Jimi Hendrix was more than a regular. He was practically a resident. By summer 1969, Jimmy was at a crossroads in his career. The Jimi Hendrix Experience, the power trio that had made him famous, had broken up in June. Noel Redding was out. Jimmy was experimenting with different lineups, different sounds, different approaches. He was also exhausted. 3 years of constant touring, recording, interviews, expectations. Everyone wanted a piece of him. Everyone had opinions about what he should do, how he should sound, what his music should represent. At the Scene, he could just be a musician. Watch other people play. Get inspired. Remember why he'd fallen in love with music in the first place. No screaming crowds. No business pressures. No need to be Jimi Hendrix, guitar god. Just Jimmy, watching other musicians do their thing. That's when he saw Sha Na Na. Sha Na Na started as an idea by George Leonard, a humanities graduate student at Columbia University. The concept was simple but audacious. Take a bunch of guys from the Columbia Kingsmen, a prestigious a cappella group, and transform them into a 1950s rock and roll revival act, complete with costumes, choreography, theatrical presentation. This was 1969, the height of hippie counterculture. Woodstock was being planned. The zeitgeist was psychedelic rock, folk, blues, protest songs. And these kids wanted to sing at the Hop and Teen Angel while dressed like extras from Greece. It was brilliant. Or insane. Maybe both. They took the name from the nonsense syllables in the Silhouette's song, Get a Job. Sha Na Na Na, Sha Na 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 Na. A playful nod to the doo-wop tradition they were reviving. The group included Jocko Marcellino, drummer, one of the founding members, still performing today. Donnie York, singer, another founding member still with the group. Alan Cooper, lead singer on their Woodstock performance. Rob Leonard, bass singer, George Leonard's brother. And several others, all Columbia students or recent graduates. They started performing in spring 1969. Small campus shows. Then the Scene Club. By the time Jimmy saw them, they'd played maybe 8 gigs total. 8. No album. No record deal. No real plan beyond having fun and seeing what happened. Just 12 college kids playing retro rock and roll in gold lamé suits. Jimi Hendrix walked into the scene one night and saw something that delighted him. Here were these young guys, most barely out of their teens, performing with complete commitment. Not ironically, not with cynicism, with genuine love for the music. Their harmonies were tight, their energy infectious, their choreography entertaining, and the crowd loved them. Other musicians at the scene, serious, credentialed rockers, were grooving to this campy 1950s revival act. Jimmy got it immediately. This was entertainment. This was joy. This was what rock and roll should be. Fun, energetic, unpretentious. Far out, man, he told them. You guys are far out. Coming from Jimi Hendrix, the greatest guitarist of the generation, this meant everything. But Jimmy didn't stop at compliments. He started bringing people to see Sha Na Na. He told Michael Lang and Artie Kornfeld, two of the main organizers of the Woodstock Festival, that they had to see this band. Had to book them. Lang and Kornfeld were skeptical. A doo-wop revival act at Woodstock? Really? But Jimmy insisted. And when Jimi Hendrix insisted, people listened. They came to the scene on what turned out to be the club's last night before it was shut down by gang activity in the area. Perfect timing. They watched Sha Na Na perform. And despite their skepticism, they were impressed. The energy, the crowd response, the sheer entertainment value. After the show, Lang and Kornfeld approached Sha Na Na's manager. Do you want to play Woodstock? The answer was immediate. Yes. Payment, $350 for the entire band. The check would later bounce. But in that moment, it didn't matter. Sha Na Na, a band that had existed for maybe 5 months and played 8 gigs, was going to Woodstock. Because Jimi Hendrix saw something special and made sure other people saw it too. August 15th to 18th, 1969. Bethel, New York. Woodstock Music and Art Fair. 3 days of peace and music. Except it rained. And the stage started sinking into the mud. And 500,000 people showed up instead of the expected 50,000. It was chaos. Beautiful, transformative chaos. Sha Na Na drove up to Woodstock in a van with their names stickered on the back window. When they pulled up behind a truck carrying Sly Stone's equipment, police gave them an escort straight to the stage area. They arrived Saturday. Their slot was scheduled for Sunday night. Except nothing at Woodstock went according to schedule. The rains came. Heavy. Relentless. The field turned to mud. The stage started sinking, literally sinking into the ground. There were real fears about electrocuting performers. Acts that were supposed to play got delayed. Pushed back. Some canceled entirely. By Sunday night, the festival was hours behind schedule. The crowd was exhausted. Many had already left. Maybe a third of the original 400,000 people remained. Still a massive crowd. Over 100,000, but tired, muddy, strung out. The promoters approached Jimi Hendrix. Jimmy's deal was clear. He would close the festival. Play last. No matter what. That's what headliners do. That's what stars of his magnitude demanded. But with the stage sinking and the crowd dwindling, the promoters wanted to move him up. Jimmy, we want you to go on now. Close the show Sunday night while we still have a decent crowd. Jimmy's response changed everything. No, he said. There are several acts who have been waiting here all weekend. They deserve to play. 3 or 4 bands, including Sha Na Na, had been hanging around since Saturday, waiting for their slots. Watching the schedule collapse, wondering if they'd get to perform at all. Jimi refused to go on until they got their chance. Think about that. The biggest star at the festival, the headliner, the guy everyone was waiting to see, refusing to perform until some college kids nobody had heard of got their 35 minutes on stage. The promoters had no choice. They relented. Sha Na Na would play Monday morning, just before Jimi Hendrix. Monday, August 18, 1969, 7:30 a.m. The sun was rising over the muddy fields of Bethel, New York, light breaking through the clouds that had dumped rain on the festival all weekend. About 30,000 to 50,000 people remained from the original crowd of 400,000. Diehards, true believers, people who'd stuck it out through the rain and the mud and the exhaustion and were determined to see Jimi Hendrix close the festival. These were the survivors, covered in mud, sleep-deprived, many still tripping from LSD they'd taken the day before, exhausted but euphoric. They'd witnessed an incredible weekend. Santana, The Who destroying their instruments, Jefferson Airplane, Sly and the Family Stone, Joe Cocker, Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young. Some of the greatest performances in rock history. And now they were waiting for Jimi, the headliner, the finale. But first, Sha Na Na took the stage. 12 college kids emerged from the wings, gold lamé suits catching the early morning light, hair greased back into pompadours and ducktails, looking like they'd walked out of a time machine from 1957. The crowd was confused. Utterly, completely confused. What was this? Who were these people? Why did they look like extras from American Bandstand? Many in the audience later admitted they thought they were hallucinating. The brown acid warning from Saturday night suddenly seemed relevant again. Are we on a bummer? You could see people thinking, is this real? Jocko Marcellino, sitting behind his drum kit, could see the confusion on people's faces. He and his bandmates were exhausted. They'd been at the festival since Saturday, camping in the mud, waiting for their slot. They'd barely slept. But they'd come this far. Jimi Hendrix had insisted they get their chance. They weren't going to waste it. Sha Na Na launched into their set with complete commitment. Their first song hit like a jolt of pure energy. Tight harmonies. Synchronized choreography. These weren't amateurs. They were trained singers from Columbia's prestigious Glee Club, now channeling that precision into rock and roll theater. The crowd's confusion started to shift. Wait, these guys can actually sing. Really sing. Those harmonies are perfect. And they're entertaining. The choreography isn't ironic. It's genuinely fun. Sha Na Na powered through their set. Early rock and roll classics. Doo-wop harmonies. The kind of music that had been popular just 10 or 12 years earlier, but felt like ancient history in 1969. Song by song, the crowd warmed up. People started clapping along. Then dancing. Then cheering. By the time Sha Na Na reached their closing number, the 1958 hit they'd chosen as their finale, the exhausted, muddy, sleep-deprived crowd was on their feet. The song exploded across the field. Pure kinetic energy. The band giving everything they had. The crowd responding with genuine enthusiasm. When the final note rang out, the response was thunderous. Standing ovation. 30,000 people on their feet, cheering, demanding more. Sha Na Na got called back for an encore. At Woodstock, after having played 8 previous gigs in their entire career. They'd done it. Against all odds, in the most unlikely circumstances imaginable, they'd won over a crowd that had every reason to reject them. And in the wings, watching with a huge smile on his face, was Jimi Hendrix. He'd been right. These kids deserved this moment. And they'd absolutely delivered. Jimi would take the stage 45 minutes later and play the most iconic performance of his career. The Star-Spangled Banner that would define Woodstock in the 1960s. But before that, he'd watched a dozen college kids in gold lamé suits prove that rock and roll, at its best, was about joy, energy, and entertainment. Not about being cool or following trends. Just about making people feel something. What Sha Na Na didn't know, what nobody knew at the time, was that their performance was being filmed. Director Michael Wadley was documenting the entire festival. His crew had cameras running constantly. They captured Sha Na Na's set, including their explosive performance of At the Hop. When Wadley started editing the documentary later, he tried to cut Sha Na Na from the film. They were too different, too campy, too out of step with the Woodstock vibe. But then a young film student named Martin Scorsese, yes, that Martin Scorsese, was brought in to help edit. Scorsese took the raw footage of Sha Na Na performing at the Hop and cut together a 90-second sequence that was pure kinetic energy. Fast cuts, close-ups on the harmonies, the choreography, the crowd's confused, then delighted reactions. It was one of the most electric moments in the documentary. The producers watched Scorsese's cut and realized, we can't remove this. This is gold. Sha Na Na stayed in the Woodstock documentary. When the film was released in 1970, theaters gave Sha Na Na standing ovations during that 90-second sequence. People who'd never heard of them became instant fans. It launched their career. After Woodstock, Sha Na Na's trajectory was insane. They played the Fillmore East and Fillmore West, opening for the Grateful Dead, the Mothers of Invention, the Kinks. They appeared in the Woodstock documentary, which became a cultural phenomenon. They landed a role in the 1978 film Grease, playing Johnny Casino and the Gamblers. 6 of their songs appeared on the Grammy-nominated soundtrack. They got their own syndicated TV variety show, which ran from 1977 to 1981, 97 episodes. Guests included James Brown, Paul Anka, even the Ramones. They've released 18 albums, sold more than 20 million records, and they're still performing today. 55 years after Jocko Marcellino and Donnie York first put on those gold lamé suits. All because Jimi Hendrix walked into a club in 1969, saw something special, and made sure the world saw it too. Jocko Marcellino, Sha Na Na's drummer and co-founder, has told this story hundreds of times over the decades. He still gets emotional talking about Jimi's generosity. Jimi got the Woodstock promoters to come see us, Jocko says. That night they offered us the gig. $350. The check bounced, but we got to play Woodstock. He remembers the moment the promoters tried to move Jimi's slot up on Sunday night. They said, "Jimi, we want you to close now." And he said, "No, there are acts who've been here all weekend and deserve to play." He and his management saved our slot. It was unbelievable. Jocko describes Jimi as quiet and thoughtful offstage. And then it's like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde when he got on stage. Man, he killed it. They crossed paths several times after Woodstock. Different festivals, different venues. Jimi was always kind to them, always supportive. We loved Jimi. Jocko says simply, less than 13 months after Woodstock, Jimi would be dead. September 18, 1970. Age 27. But his generosity, his willingness to help unknown musicians, to use his platform to lift others, lived on. The Sha Na Na story reveals something essential about Jimi Hendrix that often gets lost in discussions of his guitar technique or his wild performances. He was generous. Genuinely, actively generous. He saw talent in unexpected places and made sure others saw it too. He used his power not just for himself, but to create opportunities for people who had none. At Woodstock, when the festival was collapsing and the promoters wanted him to save it by performing early, he could have said yes. Could have taken the stage, played his set, collected his massive paycheck, gone home. Instead, he insisted that a college band with 8 gigs under their belt get their 35 minutes. They've been here all weekend. They deserve to play. That sentence changed Sha Na Na's lives. From Jocko Marcellino's perspective as a 19-year-old college kid, it must have seemed like a miracle. One minute you're playing to maybe 50 people at a campus gig. The next, Jimi Hendrix is telling Woodstock promoters they have to book you. Then he's refusing to perform until you get your slot. And then you're on stage at dawn on Monday morning, playing to tens of thousands of people, getting a standing ovation. And then you're in the Woodstock documentary, getting standing ovations in movie theaters. And then you have a 55-year career. All because one of the greatest musicians who ever lived saw you perform and thought, these guys deserve a shot. There's a beautiful piece of footage in the Woodstock documentary. While Sha Na Na is performing at the Hop, the camera cuts to the wings of the stage. Jimi Hendrix is standing there, watching them, grooving to their performance, clearly enjoying what he's seeing. The greatest guitarist of his generation, about to play the most iconic performance of his career, taking genuine pleasure in watching a doo-wop revival band entertain a muddy, exhausted crowd at sunrise. That image captures something essential about Jimi. He loved music. All music. Not just the music he made, but the music others created. He had no ego about genre or status. If it was good, if it made people feel something, he supported it. And he understood that being at the top meant you had a responsibility to lift others up. 55 years later, Sha Na Na is still performing. Jocko Marcellino is 74 years old. Still drumming. Still singing. Still wearing those gold lamé suits and combing his hair into a pompadour. When asked about Woodstock, about Jimmy, about that impossible journey from college glee club to rock and roll history, he always comes back to the same point. We're grateful to Jimi Hendrix. So grateful. He saw something in us and he made sure we got our chance. That gratitude has lasted more than half a century. And the story of how Jimi Hendrix discovered a college band playing to almost nobody and insisted they open for him at the biggest festival in history, has become part of rock and roll legend. Not because it's dramatic, not because it involves drugs or sex or violence or any of the usual rock star cliches, but because it's about something simpler and more powerful. One artist recognizing talent in others and using his power to help them succeed. New York City. Summer 1969. Steve Paul's The Scene Club. Jimi Hendrix watching 12 college kids in gold lamé suits sing at the Hop. Smiling, appreciating, and then making a phone call that would change their lives. Far out, man. You have to see this band. That's the Jimi Hendrix the world should remember. Not just the guitarist, not just the showman, but the generous soul who saw potential in unexpected places and made sure others saw it too.